emails, letters, the discussion forums on MyGov. But the most interesting thing there is that it's not just people sharing thoughts and ideas, but the immense volume of activity that is taking place across the country, where everybody, in some way or the other, depending on their aptitude, depending on their personal preferences, is working on something. And mobilizing people, mobilizing communities, not because they want to be featured on Mann Ki Baat, but because each one of us has this desire to improve our own circumstances, our own families, our communities, our nation. And Mann Ki Baat, by featuring these success stories, these initiatives, has strengthened this bond of community and individual action for community benefit. And I think that is its biggest achievement. The survey that was referred to just now, it was commissioned last year by Prasar Bharati through IM Rohtak, and the report just came out. The draft final report has just come out, and about 10,000 people were surveyed across the country in different parts. And we found that there were over 23 crore people, 230 million people, who religiously tune into every single episode of Mann Ki Baat. That's more than the population of possibly, maybe barely less than 10 countries in the world, probably, or 15. But that's the number of people who have tuned into every single episode. There's another 40 crore plus people, 400 million and above, who have listened to several episodes and who would want to actually start listening to every episode, but due to various reasons, they're not able to. And there are at least 100 crore people out of our population of about 142 at this time, who have at least once heard an episode. It started as a radio program, then over a few years, it was thought that maybe it's also a good idea to convert it and visualize it as a television program. So Doordarshan started visualizing that. So in Prasar Bharati, we are now doing not just the radio broadcast, but also the visualized television version. And then over a period of time, several private channels, both radio and TV, started picking it up. And we've reached this situation where not only are the Prasar Bharati channels on radio and TV broadcasting it, but a very large number of private channels are also broadcasting it. It is also live streamed on digital media. And I think now there is pretty much no avenue of expression, radio, TV, digital, which is not used to broadcast Mann Ki Baat. A survey was conducted in 2018, November, by Prasar Bharati. And we found that Mann Ki Baat itself, by its acceptability and by the nature of interest that it evinces in people, led a lot of people to start saying that it is because of Mann Ki Baat that they've come back to radio. So over a period of time where people used to think that radio is a dying medium, we've suddenly found that there is a lot of renewed interest in radio also. The number of people who are tuning in on digital and the visual medium is larger than the number of people who are listening to it on radio. But that's a matter of personal preference. So one way or the other, as I said, 23 crore, 40 crore plus, 100 crore people have tuned into or are regularly tuning in to Mann Ki Baat. Another interesting aspect is that the issues that are raised there, the subjects that are touched upon, also touch a chord in the minds of the listeners. So again, some surveys and details are there in the report, which will be released shortly. We find that the Google searches on those subjects tend to go up right after the broadcast. So for example, when the PM was speaking about teachers and the role of teachers on Teachers' Day, the number of searches for keywords related to teaching and teachers went up by almost 1.8 times compared to the normal search trends. So it's not just that people are listening to it on the radio or TV or on the live stream, but then they're also wanting to find out more about the subject. And that is why when he speaks about subjects that touch our daily lives, cleanliness, sanitation, community feeling, these are all things that encourage people to work in that direction. So when he's spoken about Swachh Bharat, when he's spoken about, say, water conservation, when he's spoken about plantations, planting trees and greenery and climate change, these are all things that have percolated down into the minds and hearts of the listeners. And I think every single effort in these directions, whether it is drinking water, whether it is sanitation, whether it is education, whether it is social infrastructure, these are all things that we need to strengthen to make our country a progressive and more developed country over a period of time. I think at this point of time, when we are about to reach this landmark, this milestone of 100 episodes, it's an occasion for each one of us to also look back at what are the subjects that have been talked about and what are the things that he has spoken about, and see how we can incorporate those things into our lives so that each one of us can also play our own increasing role in developing a community feeling and a collective action within the country. Something as simple as wearing khadi. We just spoke about it, and we found that within a year or so, khadi sales reached their highest ever levels. And I'm wearing khadi. I never wore khadi before that. I used to wear a lot of cotton, but never khadi. But these days, I only wear khadi jackets. So I'm also making my own little contribution there. So I commend the foundation. I commend my friend Amit and his team, all of us who worked together on this report. And I invite you all to tune in again this coming Sunday to listen to the 100th episode of Mann Ki Baat. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts and how it has been able to touch the chord of people, for it has been able to talk about topics and issues which are that of a common man. And that's the reason it has been able to cast that very impressive and massive footprints. So thank you for sharing those thoughts with us. And ladies and gentlemen, the Institute for Competitiveness India is an international initiative centered in India, dedicated to enlarging and purposeful disseminating of the body of research and knowledge on competition and strategy. The Institute studies competition and its implication for company strategy, the competitiveness of nations, regions, and cities, and thus generates guidelines and suggests and provides solutions for socio-economic problems. Up next, we have a presentation on the report, and I would like to request Dr. Amit Kapoor from the Institute for Competitiveness. He is the honorary chairman of the Institute. And we request him, and in fact, as he's going to be talking to us more on the report, we look into how the role of the citizen engagement in driving progress has been further enhanced and initiated through Mann Ki Baat. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. In fact, I must thank Gauravji for joining us here today. Of course, Akashji as well, and people who are joining online, and Archana, who's been an absolutely a stunning colleague toward when we were really compiling this work. So if you really look at this whole idea of Mann Ki Baat, as Gauravji was saying, it is one of the most stunning experiments on how do you really connect with people. Incidentally, one of the US presidents used radio way back in the 1940s, 50s, and there has been a huge connect that actually gets created there. This is something which helps you in really creating momentum towards action. It is about citizen action. So this is a very interesting platform in terms of what was happening here. This doesn't work, please. Can you just move the slide? Okay, so if you really look at it, there is something very interesting that is happening. If you look at the stories that have actually come across that we have been really talking about, it was about, say, like, there was a talk about, say, a rural tourism entrepreneur, Aditi Balbir. There was a talk about Madhav Bhatt Kalungala, who was actually talking about groundwater and working in that area. There was a talk about Ram Shankar Verma, who established solar energy to power a grain mill in Uttar Pradesh. If you really look at it, these were amazing actions that were actually taken by people. And all these people were moved to action by Mann Ki Baat per se. In fact, they were able to scale up as to whatever they were thinking. This was a hugely motivational exercise. This was actually an exercise wherein you were able to connect people together. You were able to push them towards further action. In fact, without hazarding a guess or whatever, if you really look at it, this has been a program which actually helps moving social development indicators within the country. There is clear evidence that is available that if you really look at the social progress index, from 2017 to 2021, we have seen a huge increase or uptick in social development over a period of time. And we can certainly say that something like Mann Ki Baat has been a motivational factor, or at least creating that level of communication for people to take action. It was able to go to the level of the smallest community. When you say a smallest community, you were able to take it to the level of a village per se, and you were able to take action. So now if you really start looking at something like social progress within villages, what you would find is that there is a huge development in either water or issues of health, and that development is actually seen across districts as well. What we see is that this was an exercise wherein you were able to do collective action across 40 to 50 different parameters. A lot of us, we just simply talk about there are just about 4 or 5 distinct pillars and things. But if you dig deeper, from issues of malnutrition to issues of education to issues of groundwater to issues of cleanliness, everything has actually been touched upon. If you really go beyond this as well, this is a huge exercise which is actually talking about a real application of nudge theory. How do we motivate people to move forward? In fact, this is the second thing is about how many people have got connected. As Gauravji was saying, 100 crore people have already been on the platform or heard this program. Today, when we really talk about it, I think the world can actually learn from this kind of an initiative, because what happens is that I'm able to motivate people across the board. Today is the year of the G20, and I think the world leaders should look at something like this example. It is an art of communicating with the masses. It's the art of communicating with the citizens. It's about creating a movement of sorts. This is a hugely conversational exercise, personal told, practical matter, and very, very interestingly, non-political. He was the prime minister as a person who was speaking to the country. He was not a representative of any political party when he was talking about it. And it was very clearly visible across the board. If you really look at any of the 99 episodes, we dug deeper into each episode. We read it through. We looked at the word analysis. What we did find is that it was not a single aspect which was about politics. It was all about development. It was all about citizens. It was all about community building. The thing was, one of the other things was inclusion for all. It was about citizen action. And there was, of course, highlighting key issues of key public policy interventions that could have actually been done. Of course, there was a clear-cut idea that when you talk about Swachh Bharat, the Prime Minister motivated people to make it as a movement of sorts within the country. There was a lot of governmental machinery that was working, but we need to realize that it is not just the government who can actually achieve things. It is about citizens as well. And that is what he was exactly able to do. When you communicate with people directly, when you're able to connect, that is the time when this exercise happens. If you really ask me what was the objective of the report, when we wanted to do this exercise, again, it was an interesting research question wherein we wanted to say, like, is there an impact of a radio program like this? There was not something of this sort that has happened in the last 30 to 40 years. If there is something like this that has not happened, can we understand as to what is the impact? What are the kind of analysis that we can do around it? Can we identify the prominently discussed thematic areas? Is there an action that is being driven through this? So we looked at all the 99 episodes and we ran through a fairly interesting methodology, which was driven through quantitative and qualitative analysis. We were looking at topical analysis and we were looking at hierarchical clustering analysis as well. So it was not an exercise wherein we were just throwing it off the head. It was an exercise wherein we used sophisticated tools to see as to what are the kind of conversations that are actually being built up. So we said, okay, now let's try to understand what are the kind of topics that are being talked about. Out here, if you really look at the word count, a very simple thing that we found is that these were the ideas that were being talked about out here, from agriculture to cleanliness, to the aspect of India, to yoga, to sports, to water, to technology, all the social issues that matter to the country, that matter for development. So this was an exercise, if you ask me, it was about engaging people with improving their lives. It was about ease of living and enhancing the ease of living as you would actually look at it, and how we can contribute as citizens to that exercise itself. And then, of course, we looked at the dendrogram. We wanted to understand as to what are the kind of relationships that actually exist between the various sets of words that are there. We found that there are very huge relationships that actually occur. So when you talk about agriculture, and then you're also talking about the importance of agriculture, you talk about conservation of water, and of course, there is a whole huge idea of the world around this idea of conservation of water. So the issues that matter to us within the country were also the issues that matter to the world. Today, when you talk about a very simple thing, I see there is an amazing exercise that's happening in the country called Lifestyle for Environment. And that is exactly a reflection of whatever is being said in these programs. A lot of us don't really see it, but Lifestyle for Environment is about pushing people to really make that change and make that difference. The Sankey diagram, wherein we try to actually understand as to what are the kind of relationships that exist between various sets of words. I would request you to go through the material in the report as well. But going further, these were the 5 broad themes that came across very, very strongly. Cleanliness and sanitation. You talked about health. In fact, health became such an important subject over the last 3 years. And this was a communication medium which actually motivated people to using vaccination. There was a huge level of vaccination hesitancy that did creep in at a certain point in time. But here is a person who said that you just saw that video as well, that it is something which is beneficial. It actually motivated people to think right. It was actually about science, and that is what was being delivered here. The idea of wellness. How do we actually make ourselves as citizens much more healthy? How do we really talk about wellness? Water conservation. Water is a major issue, and that needs to be talked about. And of course, sustainable development. And if you really look at it, there are some amazing examples that were quoted within the study. So, like, as you say, like, why do I have to talk about the case studies here? A simple example, it was not that the Prime Minister was actually going out and picking up something. He was really talking about grassroots people. They were talking about people who are possibly unknown to us. We don't even care, or we don't even hear about them. Here is a person who said, let me understand as to how people are contributing to nation building. And these were the set of people who looked at, or who were looked at. A simple example of this open defecation free Sampuran Naya Sarai. This is a beautiful example of how a whole village who used to defecate in the pond that was there was actually became open defecation free. Today, that is a location where women are able to go freely. If you really ask me, when you talk about it, is also about security. So these are these additional issues that actually emerge that we really don't think about as to how it enhances women's safety over a period of time. It reduces crime. And these are the set of actions that were being taken. The second thing was the Project Sampoon. It was about a very simple example of how malnutrition can actually affect. So it was a buddy program wherein malnutrition was something that was being covered or associated and taken care of. There was a huge, massive drop and malnutrition number in these villages and districts. It became a whole what do you call exercise across the state as well. And that was a very clear evidence to see. The second, one of the examples was the cancer treatment. In fact, a lot of us, like when you talk about yoga, yoga is a fairly hugely cultural thing that we were having, and there is this whole what do you call discussion about it. But there is this medical what do you call assessment that happened, like how Tata Memorial was actually using this. What we found was something very, very interesting, that there was a 15% what do you call improvement in the disease-free survival. That means the quality of life of people was improving with a very simple exercise. And what it was associated with the kind of conversations that were actually happening. So you are able to move people, or you were able to move mountains by a simple conversation that you were able to have with people. The Nagandi River Rejuvenation Project. This is again a very interesting example for a river which was absolutely dry, which had fairly become dead. And it was about how villagers came together to understand the importance, and they got it right. And these were the ideas that were discussed. So they were not, when we were discussing these ideas, what we did find is that there were a multiplier effect that actually happened across the country. And when I say that there is a whole huge improvement in quality of life, this is getting reflected in how things are happening across the country. It motivated people to make a difference. There was this very interesting case study that was again talked about cleaning of the beaches. If you realize 4,000 tons of scrap was actually removed from those beaches, it was a civilian effort. It was not that anybody else was involved. And now it has actually become a movement across the country the moment it was talked about on Mann Ki Baat. So creating movements is the idea of these conversations. And of course, SDGs itself, we cannot miss the point that there were huge sets of SDGs which were actually impacted through this exercise that was done. It was about Green India Mission, the SDG 6, SDG 11 was actually affected, health, SDG 3, water conservation, the programs were Jan Shakti Abhiyan, Namami Gange, but the question is the civilian activity or the contribution was also affecting SDG 6, 12, 14, and 15. The same as the thing with a very simple thing like Fit India movement. A lot of people will not realize, but there is an important element in quality education that Fit India movement fits into. The SDG goals says that we need to have sustainable education. We need to have fit children, and that was actually getting fitted here as well. So these are some very important examples. If you really look at the Mann Ki Baat effort to raise awareness and encourage activism within citizens, it was something very, very powerful across the board, and many what I call SDGs again getting affected. But at the end of the day, if you really ask me, it was principally driven by the 5C principle. And that 5C was like citizen engagement, connecting with the masses, catalyzing collective action, cultural commitment, and celebrating change makers. And like it is not about money, it is about recognition across the board. And the Prime Minister clearly understood it is about recognizing people. It is about celebrating people. And that is what has exactly happened on these programs. So if you really look at the citizen engagement, it was at the heart of the governance idea that we were really trying to develop. It is about a change in the governance model as a country that we are really looking at. If you really look at the whole idea of celebrating change makers of India, it's about celebrating the spirit of India's change makers. There were things that were happening across the board. There was an emphasis on the startup idea itself. And look at how people started moving into that direction. A simple statement could actually move people into taking action. It was about connecting with the wider masses. Over 100 crore people have got connected. There has not been a situation wherein close to about 70% or 75% of the country was connecting directly to the people. When you say directly, because there was a whole huge mechanism that was created, people were writing back and you were taking action. In fact, there was a person who wrote about this whole vaccination story. There was a letter that went to the Prime Minister's office and action was taken. So very simple reactions were actually being seen, like to what are the kind of communications that happen, how we can motivate people. And this is what was done here. So it is about catalyzing collective progress towards achieving sustainable development goals. I would request you to look at the numbers on sustainable development. In fact, If you really look at the pace of change and sustainable development, you'll be surprised. The world will achieve SDGs as late as 2175. The world is late on achieving SDGs. But I must tell you that India will achieve it at least 140 years in advance of the rest of the world. So there is a huge implication as to what is really happening here. And then, of course, it is about cultural commitment. It is about celebrating ourselves. It's celebrating our culture that was coming through very, very strongly out here as well. And looking forward, I think there has to be a much deeper engagement as we go along. We need to talk about other set of things. So the people can really continue to move into the direction of engaging, creating those local movements. In fact, if you are able to listen to this, if you're able to understand the implications, we can actually do it within our communities itself. And that simple contribution is the idea. Because at the end of the day, the man is known by the contribution he makes. And I think it is our responsibility as citizens to really move into that direction and start making that contribution. So thank you. I would not really take much more of your time. I think I've already taken a lot of time. Thank you.
Thank you for talking to us and taking us to this case studies. And all these case studies, ladies and gentlemen, they have been collated from different parts of the country. And we saw that how, this Mann ki Baat, Man ka Man se connection, it was able to establish, and then stimulating minds, igniting minds, and people feeling responsible, and that sense of ownership came, and they were doing it themselves, the work, and also inspiring the others. I will just deviate from slightly the schedule which we have because I believe Mr. Mark Esposito, he's joined us online, and he's has to leave for a meeting. So I would like to request Dr. Mark Esposito, who's professor of the Harvard International Business School and Harvard University, to kindly share his remarks.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me fine. And it's an honor to be part of the launch of this report. Just now heard the words of Dr. Kapoor, and is remarkable to witness as a non-Indian, right, the initiative they have directly reach millions of people through the voice of the Prime Minister. A few reflections I'd like to make as we're preparing for more conversation and more guests on this panel. So the first thing is, one of the challenges of many democracies and many challenges that we face these days is how do we create the degree of direct information that goes from central structures to peripheries. One of the major problems we have in democracies is the level of information dissonance that sometimes happens across layers of administration, local governments, and of course, municipalities. Now, a program like the one that you're celebrating today are a perfect example that when it's becoming directly spoken by the Prime Minister, many conversations are really sparkling. Is a perfect relationship between the top down and the bottom up that is really inspiring an engagement which is becoming civic in nature, but fundamentally is where democracy grows to the next level. Second and subscribe to what Dr. Kapoor said, the sustainability goals are a challenge for every single country. Current business as usual, we will not see this as a 2030 celebration. But when we see examples that are now directly engaging citizens at a much deeper level, we understand that sustainability is not only the environmental discourse, it's also the socio-economic one. And engagement is really the foundation of a change of culture that is required for ambitious goals to really be in place. The SDG are ambitious visions that the UN has launched for humanity at large, but how do we really implement and execute? It has to be in some form of project that really sparkling from multiple parts of the stakeholder universe. One of these will be directly speaking to citizens. What you are celebrating today is the ability to understand that democracy 2.0 will actually carry the name of India moving forward. This is a conversation that I equally had the pleasure to run a few days ago in a meeting with Dr. Kapoor and Dr. DeBroy, where we actually really talk about the fatigue of the old systems and how do we actually re-engage and energize democracy to the next value proposition. And he has to start from an initiative like this, where we are creating less distance between citizens and the policymakers. It's also a fantastic opportunity for policymakers to have a sense of the reality in a country that is complex, not only in terms of the territory, is complex in terms of the different socioeconomic disparity that we have in India, but it's also important because of the demographical force the country has. 1.4 billion people as the most populous country on earth not only has to be celebrated as a number, but also as a wind of change, of possibility that we have in transforming. So I like to share just my commandment for this initiative. This report is not only a report that is capturing data and conducting analysis, it's also the very beginning of a testament of the Prime Minister towards an engagement that is much deeper, is actually much more related to serving people. It's remind us that public service fundamentally is about serving. And I think this is a clear message that hopefully other countries around the world will be inspired. We are in an era where we cannot easily benchmark anymore, neither we can do replication, but we can get inspired. And from this side of the world where I'm currently connecting from, I have to tell you, thank you for the inspiration you provide on a regular basis with initiatives of this nature. Back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for your views. And it's good to also have the views of people from outside and how you feel that Mann Ki Baat has been able to connect with people. It's more of a seva and a service, and also inspiring other nations. Thank you for your remarks. Thank you. And now I would like to invite Shri Pradeep Gupta, the founder, chairman and managing director of Access My India, and Access My India is our research partners. I request him to share his insights on the process of identifying these special achievements and collating these case studies of people who have been profiled in this study, and of those who have inspired to take impactful actions through the Mann Ki Baat. Mr. Gupta, ladies and gentlemen, is a leading market researcher, and he's India's top psephologist, author of significant books. In fact, Access My India research model has been developed into a Harvard Business School case study as well. So over to Mr. Gupta.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm sure you can all, am I audible enough?
Yeah, loud and clear. Yeah.
Eminent personality present here, offline, online. So at Access My India, we do research and try to understand humankind and their behavior, and in fact, their needs, expectations, and aspirations. So that's our job. But this study, Mann Ki Baat, was a very special in that sense. And when it comes to Mann Ki Baat, for us by Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is three basic things. One is the communication, second is the conviction, and the third is the transformation. When I say communication, whom you are communicating to? Here we are talking about 1.4 billion people, 600,000 plus villages, 6,500 cities and towns. There are 23 languages spoken, 1,000 plus dialects. Every 50 kilometer dialects gets changed. So this is the universe our Prime Minister is trying to communicate to. When it comes to the communication, what is most important is to have a credible voice, the strong value proposition, and most importantly, the conviction. Because here we are talking about the human behavior, human behavior, and it is very hard to change. So our team has visited many parts of this country and try and meet different people and try and witness how their lives has impacted before and after Mann Ki Baat. आपको एक छोटी छोटी चीजें मैं बताने की कोशिश करूं तो एक मुंबई में बीचेस अंडर द स्वच्छ भारत अभियान, द बीच क्लीनिंग इज वन थिंग, बट उसके पहले जरूरी है कि आप कचरा फेंक रहे हैं, एक कचरा फेंक रहे हैं और कचरे को फिर साफ कर रहे हैं. ये जो इतना बड़ा चेंज है वो इतना आसान नहीं है, particularly behavior change again. Then the vaccination, the COVID vaccination in Madhya Pradesh, when our people went there and meet, they said people were very reluctant. In fact, 2-3 months, they were so reluctant, not a single person had adopted for the vaccination. And once they listen to Prime Minister and Mann Ki Baat, and then, in fact, Prime Minister has spoken to them. And जब प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने पूछा आप क्यों नहीं ले रहे हैं, तो उन्होंने बताया सम काइंड ऑफ अ बिलीव कि सोशल मीडिया पे ये चल रहा है, इससे ये होता है, वो होता है. एंड देन प्राइम मिनिस्टर मेंशन दैट आई माई सेल्फ हैज टेकन द वैक्सीनेशन, और ये सारी एक गलत धारणाएं हैं, आपको ऐसे नहीं करना चाहिए. उसके बाद से लाइन लगा के एंड विद इन फ्यू डेज सारा का सारा गांव जो है वो वैक्सीनेट हो गया. सो दिस इज द काइंड ऑफ चेंज वी आर टॉकिंग हियर. द वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट particularly in rural India, where there is no municipality facility to clean the garbage. Then मन की बात सुनने के बाद लोगों ने खुद का ही क्लीनिंग और खुद का ही कचरे का सेग्रीगेशन in a right manner किया, and we have witnessed that in Uttarakhand. So this is the kind of a transformational change जो मन की बात है ने लेके जमीन के ऊपर आया, और इतना बड़ा चेंज है कि you cannot imagine. जो चेंज ऑफ हैबिट्स की जहां तक बात करें, तो अभी थोड़े दिन पहले प्राइम मिनिस्टर बोल रहे थे कि आप जिम जाते हैं, और जिम मोस्टली खासकर अर्बन इंडिया के अंदर आप कार में या व्हीकल के ऊपर जाते हैं, और वो 1.5 से 2 किलोमीटर के दूरी पर होता है. तो क्यों ना आप पैदल चल के या रनिंग करके जाएं, तो आपकी हेल्थ भी अच्छी बने और फ्यूल और पोल्यूशन का भी भला हो. तो दीज आर द वेरी स्मॉल थिंग्स जो कि इतना बड़ा चेंज लेके आएगा, ये सोच नहीं सकते थे, बिकॉज हैबिट्स आर वेरी हार्ड टू चेंज. वी हैव विटनेस्ड मेनी अ टाइम्स. यू नो, it's all about that conviction and the who is speaking all these things. That is very important. And जो जमीन के ऊपर across the country, north, south, east, west, central, we have visited everywhere, and सारे के सारे लोगों जिनको मिले हम लोग, हमारी टीम मिली, उन्होंने बताया ये तो कभी सोचा ही नहीं था, इस तरह से कभी सोचा ही नहीं था जैसे कि प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने बताया. और उसके बाद से उन्होंने कोशिश की और उसको फॉलो किया, और उसके बाद से जो इम्पैक्ट आया और जो चेंज आया उनकी लाइफ में, और एक बोलते हैं जीने का तरीका ही चेंज हो गया. दिस इज व्हाट इज द आउटकम ऑफ द मन की बात और इसका इम्पैक्ट. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
थैंक यू प्रदीप जी, अपने विचारों को हमारे साथ साझा करने का. और जैसे कि आपने कहा कि एक लोगों की सोच बदली है, दैट्स बीन एटीट्यूडनल चेंज, बिहेवियरल चेंज. और वो कहते हैं ना कि सोच बदल के देखिए, सितारे बदल जाएंगे. नज़र को बदलने की जरूरत नहीं है, नजरिए को बदल के देखिए, नज़ारे बदल जाएंगे. एंड दैट्स इम्पैक्ट इट हैज बीन एबल टू क्रिएट. थैंक यू सो वेरी मच फॉर शेयरिंग विद अस. We also have Mr. Michael Green, who has joined us online. I would now like to request him, Michael Green, who is the CEO of Social Progress Imperative, and I request him to share his thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, and what a pleasure it is to be part of this celebration of the achievements of Mann Ki Baat. I mean, obviously, I'm not a consumer of Mann Ki Baat, but I have read with great pleasure the report about what Mann Ki Baat has achieved. And I think what struck me is that it really exemplifies the fundamental principles about communication. What do I mean by that? Well, let me go back to the English word communication and its root, which is the Latin verb communicare. Now, communicare is not a verb that means to talk, to speak, to shout, to hector, to broadcast. Communicare actually means to share. And I think fundamental communication is about sharing. And what strikes me about Mann Ki Baat is it exemplifies that principle of sharing in a number of ways. Let me go through those. The first of which is it's talking about a shared vision that we have as people. My organization, Social Progress Imperative, is collaborating with the Institute for Competitiveness and the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister on social progress index for the states and districts of India. And what that really tries to do is map out, the progress in terms of the real things that matter to real people. Can I get access to water? Have I got good food? Is my environment clean? Can my kids go to school? These are the things that really matter to us. And these are the things that are the topics of Mann Ki Baat. So Mann Ki Baat is talking about the issues that really matter to our shared humanity. And that, I think, is a critical feature. And they're also about the shared future of India. Amit talked about the aspirations that India has and the very aggressive development goals, and that's about changing that lived experience to people, that shared lived experience. And that's actually a global aspiration captured within the Sustainable Development Goals. That's a shared project for the world as a whole. So Monkey Butt, by focusing on these real things that matter to real people, is very much talking about a shared collective experience. The second way I think is a shared experience is the way it's very, positively decided to reach out to people using different languages. So it's aimed to be inclusive as possible, to bring as many people in as possible. And also to do that, it's also relied on technology, the technology of the radio, which we heard about earlier. And again, the radio may seem like old technology, but actually it's a way to ensure that everyone can participate. So Monkey Butt can be consumed by the digital natives, but it can also be consumed by people in rural communities who've never even used a smartphone. Again, creating a shared collective experience. And then the final piece, I think, in sharing is the really critical one, is that Monkey Butt has really sort of focused on allowing feedback, making this a conversation. So it's not just about broadcast, it's about hearing the voice of the citizen as well, whether that's through phoning in or writing in, or I was fascinated to hear about the Monkey Butt booths that are available to allow people to contribute. And this made me think back to nearly 100 years ago. The German playwright Bertolt Brecht wrote an essay about the radio as a means of communication. And he complained that the radio is not yet finished technology. He said the radio would be the most powerful tool in the world if only the listener could speak back and be heard. And that's what Monkey Butt has done. It's not just about broadcast. It's not just about, the equivalent of, I think Amit was talking about Franklin Delano Roosevelt's fireside chats to the nation. It's also about conversation where people can speak back and be heard and share their own experience, which is critical to this process. So that's what fascinates me about Monkey Butt. It's really exemplifies that idea about communication as being about sharing, a shared experience, a shared goal, and a shared conversation. So it's been a great privilege to hear about it, and I look forward to hearing more of the conversation as it goes forward.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your thoughts. So it's a shared experience, shared responsibility for a shared prosperity. As you mentioned, that it is a program which is very interactive. It's not a monologue, just a dialogue or a talk coming from one side. We have seen it over the years becoming all the more interactive. In fact, in September 2015, the MyGov portal, they started a new feature enabling people to call in and to share their thoughts. And a large proportion of people who were calling and again sharing their thoughts and either through the letters which were coming in or through these calls were from, again, not from the metropolitan cities, but from the tier 1, tier 2, दूर गांव से, दूर दराज गांव से लोग communicate कर रहे थे, अपने भावनाओं को उनके साथ share कर रहे थे. And MyGov platform has become synonymous with public engagement in India, and the platform both adds to and learns from the whole citizen connect of this show. So I would now like to invite Shri Akash Tripathi ji, the CEO of MyGov, to kindly share his thoughts with us.
CEO Prasar Bharati, Gaurav Devdi sir, Archana ji, Amit ji, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen. As we all know that Monkey Baat is completing 100 episodes this Sunday. I have been part of this program as CEO of MyGov since last 6 months. I can say that it's an incredible journey of 99 episodes so far. Monkey Baat is not just the Mann Ki Baat of our Prime Minister, but it's Jan Jan Ki Mann Ki Baat of our 1.42 billion citizens. This I can say with conviction because every month we receive on our micro platform suggestions, questions, and other feedback from citizens all across the country, not only through our discussion forum, but also through IVRS platform. Mann Ki Baat has not only revived the old and seemingly obsolete medium of radio, but also it has come as a breath of fresh air in this era of clutter of OTTs, social media, entertainment. In its journey of 99 episodes, I can say one thing, that Mann Ki Baat definitely has come as a fountainhead of mass movements. In its very first episode, if you remember, on 3rd of October 2014, which was a Vijayadashmi day, Honorable Prime Minister has exhorted for a mass movement for Clean India. And afterwards, we witnessed that it has become one of the largest mass movement in the independent India, which is called Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. And there are so many, it was just the beginning. And there was a chain of mass movements which started through Mann Ki Baat, whether it is call for Khadi, it is COVID vaccination, Har Ghar Tiranga Abhiyan, in which crores and crores of people participated at just one call, whether it is ODF, campaign against single-use plastic, Mission Life, as Amit ji mentioned, Vocal for Local, which has also become a mass movement. So phenomenal initiatives like Jan Aushadhi Kendra, Amrit Sarovars have also got their seed sown in this Mann Ki Baat program. The other very significant dimension of Mann Ki Baat is narration of inspiring stories of Indian citizens in a very conversational and informal way of speaking. When Prime Minister narrates those stories in Mann Ki Baat, it seems as if some head of family or some wise elderly person is sharing their thoughts with us. And these inspiring stories basically covers the exemplary work done by our citizens across nook and corner of our country. And the areas in which they are working is as diverse as renewable energy on one side, education, traditional medicine, millets, startups, sports, and so on. So these inspiring stories also inspire other citizens to emulate these citizens, and then it becomes a mass movement. And they also become agents for socio-economic change. Another important aspect of the show is emphasis on inclusiveness and diversity. The Prime Minister's messages are often dedicated to a group of citizens like students, farmers, women. So it plays and he encourages them to play an active role in shaping the country's future. And this focus on inclusiveness has given popularity to this show. As this report highlights, the program has had an expansive impact, particularly in terms of building public participation, modeled towards addressing key challenges, and it continues to inspire change makers and celebrate change makers who are contributing towards nation building. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be part of the release of this report, and it's also an honor for me to be part of this Mann Ki Baat program. Thank you.
Thank you, Akash, for sharing your thoughts. So once again, as he said, it's been जन भागीदारी से बदलाव और जो नए भारत का निर्माण सभी को साथ लेके सभी के थॉट्स सभी के जो विचार है उसको सम्मिलित करके आगे बढ़े. And towards that, if you see, ladies and gentlemen, the Gates Foundation, they have been working in India now almost for 2 decades, and they have been engaged in various sectors, especially in the area of health and towards eradication of poverty. And they have been able to make quite a bit of impact they have connected with the community. They have involved the community in their work. So it's again going to be very interesting what's been communicated, and Mann Ki Baat is where it has been able to relate to the community, relate to the people, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they have been able to work more with the people. At the same time, they've also helped us in the report. So I would now like to invite Shri Hari Menon. Again, he's joining us online, the India Country Director, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to please share his thoughts, his perspective on how you view the change which has been brought about through Mann Ki Baat, and also the long-term change potential of Mann Ki Baat.
Good evening and thank you very much. Gauravji, Akashji, partners from the Institute of Competitiveness, Access by India, and distinguished guests, members of the media. Firstly, apologies for not being able to join in person. I suffered a slip disc, so I am currently immobile. So I will make some brief comments and then hand over to my colleague Archana Vyas, who's present in the room. But for me, on behalf of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it's a true privilege to be part of these celebrations commemorating the upcoming 100th episode of Mann Ki Baat. I won't go into all the phenomenal change that Mann Ki Baat has actually helped achieve. The speakers before me have covered this in some detail, and the report itself has a lot more. So I'll just speak briefly about why for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation this is such a critical and crucial innovation, not just for the change it's triggering in India. And Dr. Kapoor spoke about the potential for progress towards the SDGs, but also the potential lessons it holds for other countries that are looking to make similar step change progress to get to the SDGs. So the Gates Foundation has been present in India for 20 years. This is actually our 20th anniversary, and over these last 2 decades, our work has focused on a few sectors which resonate actually very well with the key themes that Mann Ki Baat covers. Health and wellness, nutrition, sanitation, financial inclusion, agriculture, and women's economic empowerment. And what we find is, these days, behavior change, communication, shifting of social norms, these are among the biggest barriers to the adoption of solutions that enable progress. And through Mann Ki Baat, what you have in India is, India's most important influencer, Prime Minister Modi, reaching out and lending his voice in a way that's, as Professor Green mentioned, it's about sharing perspectives and, triggering action. So it's not just an information dissemination initiative. The beauty of Mann Ki Baat is the number of change makers it's actually been able to create. And for a country as vast as India, as heterogeneous as India, the only way we have sustainable development is if our people own the change. If the people feel that they are agents to someone else who's driving change, then I don't think we have sustainable progress. The only way we move forward is if we have government, society, partners, including the private sector, philanthropy like us, and of course the media, working in a joint together way to drive progress. And never has that been as important as it is now. The COVID pandemic and the global economic headwinds have caused a dramatic setback to the progress that we were seeing pre-2019. India is one of the few countries that has actually done a great job of catching up and making up for some of that loss. And in many ways, it is to India to set the pathway for how the world should get to the SDGs. And it is our belief that learning from the examples of Mann Ki Baat, many of which are beautifully documented in the videos as well as the report, will give us a template through which to get communities, people involved in wanting and driving for change, because that's really the only pathway for sustainability. So it is a privilege for us to be associated with this report. I'm really sorry I'm not there, but my colleague Archana is, so I'm going to hand it over to her to share some additional perspectives, looking at the communications and the behavioral insights aspect of Mann Ki Baat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hari. Carrying forward in terms of the domain of, from the perspective of domain of behavior science and behavior change, I would just make about 3 key highlights. One is the fact that the Mann Ki Baat platform, as we've heard from the CEO of Prasar Bharati as well as CEO of MyGov, has been truly exemplary in terms of reaching vast majority of population. India has a diverse population, urban as well as rural, and the platform actually does huge justice in terms of reaching these populations almost equally and effectively. It's almost like it's in a world where there's a lot of competition when it comes to airwaves as well as broadcasting, it has been a unifier. It's almost like a roadblock. Such kind of appointment viewing, as the CEO was speaking about, whether it is 23 crore people watching every episode or 40 crore people actually watching as many episodes, or 100 crore people watching more than one episode, it just does not happen. It is truly a world exemplar. Also, I'm sure that when the first episode was being telecast, it's good to look back in terms of what a genius this platform has been, but I'm sure that I'm not very sure that people had the vision that it'll be so successful. The language, the interactivity has been truly, truly unique. And I can say, being a communications person, looking at different formats, that for a long-standing format of 100 episodes, such a kind of appointment viewership just does not happen. So it is truly a very, very unique intervention. The second thing that I would say is, beyond reach, the platform has actually spurred individual action through people's participation. So it should not be misunderstood as just an outreach platform. It is actually what the Access study has also demonstrated, that it is an action-oriented platform. And the third thing that I would say, it's the last one, especially from a social and behavior change perspective, that Mann Ki Baat actually exemplifies the theory of positive deviance. Many people, as far as public health is concerned, researchers as well as implementers, have used positive deviance for development. There are actually 5 principles that I note from positive deviance. One is that the fact that communities possess the solutions and they have the expertise to address their own problems. The second one is the fact that communities can self-organize to derive solutions to their problems. And we saw that in the case of either when beaches were being cleared, as well as in the case of Swachh Bharat Mission. The third one that I would say is communities possess the collective intelligence as well as the will for taking action, as we saw in the case of COVID and TB, when it comes to people actually getting together so that they can serve other TB patients. The fourth one is the fact that positive deviance rests on the fundamentals of sustainability as well as lasting impact. And lastly, behavior change can be achieved only through the act of doing. It's amazing to see a platform which was seen as perhaps, an outreach to reach out to people, can lead to people's action in a sustainable manner so that progress can be achieved. With that, I thank you and I hand it back to Vimi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Menon, and thank you to Archana for sharing your thoughts. And as I said, it has actually empowered the communities to think and act. Atmanirbhar banaya hone. So that's the kind of impact this program has able to cast. And thank you to all our speakers for sharing this positive impact which the program has been able to bring about. Hope you go through the entire report and the various cases which have been here collated. So thank you, everyone. Thank you once again to Gauravji. Thank you to Akashji. And thank you to our online speakers also. At the end, may I request all of you to kindly release the report and we'll have a group photograph. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our friends from the media for joining us. And now we invite you for high tea. Thank you.
Firstly, compliments for your very elegant army jacket. You inspired a lot of people.